In Minnesota, where Democrats control the governor's mansion and both chambers of the state legislature after winning a state Senate seat by just 321 votes last November, a Minnesota miracle is unfolding as they make progress on a whole host of issues, from protecting abortion rights and new gun safety measures to expanding access to the ballot and reducing child poverty.
As a minister, as a person of faith, I've said it many times before, I know what miracles look like. This was not one. This was a lot of work, okay?
That work is what this episode is about. The voice you just heard is JaNaé Bates. She'll be talking about critical, sustained organizing with working class people. Our conversation punctuates the themes we've talked about throughout this series. In this season finale, we conclude with a conversation about organizing to win. This is Shifting Terrain. I'm Rachel Rybacek, a working class sociologist and organizer. I've spent a long time thinking about race and class, most recently in politics. Today I'm talking with JaNaé Bates, co-director of Faith in Minnesota and Isaiah. Welcome to Shifting Terrain.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with some context. Can you please tell us about the work of Faith in Minnesota and Isaiah?
Absolutely. So we are in the great state of Minnesota, and Isaiah organizes with communities of faith, but we also organize in rural Minnesota with farm families. We organize about 500 childcare centers, young folks in college campuses, and young renters. We also organize Black-owned barbershops and Black Christian institutions as well. And so we have a relatively large base of about 500,000 Minnesotans all across the state fighting for a caring economy and a multiracial democracy where we can thrive. And then Faith in Minnesota is our more partisan arm of Isaiah, where we get to do that work. And instead of organizing institutions of faith, we organize people of faith. And we also have a PAC, which is Faith in Minnesota Action PAC as well.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's a lot. It sounds to me like this is really addressing ultimately the needs and concerns of working class people.
Absolutely. So our entire theory of change is grounded in the idea, the notion, the reality that regular people across race, across gender, across geography, across age, and across faith should absolutely get to be involved, not just involved in our political arena and civic engagement, but actually have a say, take responsibility for, and have agency in creating our government. That government should be we the people. And so this really is about just regular schmegler people, working class folks who are taking responsibility to change the conditions around them and leveraging policy and electeds to do it.
Are there conversations that happen within these organizations and or amongst the base about class explicitly and race?
Absolutely. I mean, if you couldn't tell by the wide variety of folks that we're organizing with, it is truly multiracial. And what that means is that folks across race, across culture, and their own enclaves of people get to also build power with those who think differently, look differently, pray differently than others. And we do that intentionally because we know, especially in a state that like Minnesota, where it is overwhelmingly white, but just across this country, period, that if we are really going to build true multiracial solidarity, but multiracial power for generations to come, it requires us to be in real relationship with each other. And so all of the work that we do is done in that lens. So we are consistently having conversations about how we are addressing race head on and how we are also addressing class head on. And that is not an and, but it is a completely intersected together. It absolutely has to happen together because we know if you just have an economic populism message, you end up where we have, right? If it is void of race, which is a huge mistake, knowing that race is leveraged at every level of government, but even in our interpersonal conversations, it is leveraged and used as a power play in order to keep people divided, in order to hoard resources, in order to say those people are scary. You should not pay taxes for blank group of people, or you should just worry about yourself because those people are coming after you. And it is all a long, concerted effort that has been really salient in this country to divide and conquer.
What does it look like on the ground, sort of day to day or interaction to interaction, with getting people connected to each other across race, culture? Maybe they share class in terms of being working class. And trying to organize people across these differences, what does it look like to really connect people?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it, especially in organizing, at the core of it, it's about our leaders. You will never hear me call the folks who organize with us volunteers, even though some may understand it that way, but they're leaders. And our leaders, they get to have agency. And that getting to a place where people actually really believe that they deserve agency, that they should have it, and then have the political will to go for it is a process in itself. That is a political process, especially when you're talking about Black and brown people, when you're talking about poor folks. We have consistently been told over and over again, we actually don't deserve those kinds of things. And so a lot of the work where it really starts is leadership development. Folks get to go through conversations and house meetings. Sometimes is how their entry point is to our organization, is through a house meeting where they have what we call a pain to power conversation. Way too often we do get put in positions where we come together to complain about how everything is terrible. But these pain to power conversations actually put you on it's an arc where you do get to talk about the very real woes that people are feeling, the financial hardships that folks are experiencing, the problems that they're having, the bureaucracy that they're trying to navigate. And then we get to talk about where that originates from. What are the set of lies that you've been told about what happened or why? Who have we been told to blame for a set of things? And that is it tends to be a bit of a journey that folks get to go on. And at the end of the day, what has become really true is that all of our pockets are being picked by the same people, and then they're just pointing at a different person on who did it. And so as we get to dig into that actually then gets us to a place where we can start to imagine, what can we have? What can we do? Who can we be together when we reject that? When we reject the lies, we get to come in clear-eyed about what we're up against, right? And knowing, being clear-eyed about what we're up against, we get to actually create a strategy on how we can get to this vision. That is the kind of thing that will get people oh, I can do more. We can do more. Actually, we can do this next thing and this next thing and this next thing. And actually, let's come together and figure out how to do it. And you are now set on fire to go out and tell other people and your neighbors and to pull them in about, let me tell you how we just passed this one bill in our tiny city. But that has actually led us to be able to think about how we can do it at the state level. I mean, in Minnesota, we've seen that happen where in the city of St. Paul in 2012, 9 little church ladies were in a church basement co-conspiring with their organizer about the next thing they wanted to do. And they started with talking about how upset they were that their adult children were unable to take off of work when their grandbaby was sick. This was egregious. It created a big hardship in the family. And of course, this has implications for the grandparents who are trying to figure out how to take care of their grandchild while their child could go to work, who also now has a little sniffle too. And it's a whole thing, right? And so in that church basement, they decided we're going to embark on how to pass sick time in the city of St. Paul. And so they spent a year or two working with their city council members, with the mayor, to be able to pass what at that time was the strongest sick and safe time policy in the country. Now that happened because a bunch of, again, little church ladies in the basement decided this is what we're going to do. They worked with labor unions in the city. They worked with their council members, and they were able to get that passed. But those same women were also huge, huge catalysts to us passing the sick and safe time at the state level in 2023. And most certainly they were big components to us passing paid family medical leave at the state level. And it is the most racially and gender equitable paid leave policy in the country. You can only get to that place when you are intentionally constructing the hope of people and allowing them and unleashing them to go and construct the hope of others through having agency in the world.
Something that caught my attention is the year of their conversation, their first conversation. You said it was 2012, and the state level happened in 2023. And so it just underscores this is a long haul,
Absolutely.
folks, right? This is something that it's not just during an election cycle.
Yeah.
So it's about sustaining that pressure and vision.
Yes.
That's not easy.
No.
I say this as an organizer. How did they maintain that effort?
Yes. This is one of my favorite questions. So some may know or be familiar with what has been coined the Minnesota Miracle. It's like the Minnesota Miracle 2.0, this like 2023 iteration of it. With the first Minnesota Miracle apparently happening in the 70s before I was born, around like really taxing the rich, frankly, putting real resources into the state so that all Minnesotans could have a good life. And so this 2023 Minnesota Miracle, as a minister, as a person of faith, I've said it many times before, I know what miracles look like. This was not one. This was a lot of work. Okay? A lot
Good
of
clarification. That is, yeah, right. It didn't just
Yes.
happen.
We did it in consortium with the creator, but it was a lot of work. And so the thing to this question that you're asking, like, how do you sustain in the many years, sometimes decades long work to actually get to pass policies that change concrete conditions of people's lives? It is this thing that we're talking about. Like, organizing allows people to be a part of that process in a way that is not just mobilization. I think we've gotten used to this notion of mobilization, certainly through like the 2016 years of the first Trump administration. Mobilization was really what we saw a lot of protests, a lot of show up at the thing and go home, wait for your call, the bat signal to show up again. But in organizing, you're actually in deep relationship and strategy with one another in a way that is different. Like, yes, we will have the big mobilization moments, but really the like leadership development, the building, the strengthening, the durability and resilience that it comes out of that is in the coaching that's happening and in winning things. And I think that is a point where we tend to miss the mark. Like, I feel like the Democratic Party has missed the mark in quite a bit of ways around this, but you actually do need to concretely win things once in a while in order to continue that momentum. The 2023 legislative session was my 7th session. And I will tell you, every single year in those 7 years felt the same. And it felt the same in the sense that we had built an agenda. We knew what the policy was that we actually really needed. We knew that we were going to have a strategy of every session showing up, having leaders ready to testify, doing the social media pushes, writing the letters to the editor. We did that every single year. But the thing that we did that made it not just mobilization to the next thing that we have to do together was the pre-meetings where we got to develop the strategy. What are the set of things that we need to do during this testimony session? What are the set of things that we need to do in this letter writing to the editor session? What are the set of things that we need to make sure that this legislator hears from us in this research visit with them? And then after the thing happens, then we have a debrief. Because a lot of times, like, we think of failure as this, like, all-encompassing terrible thing, or we didn't pass the bill this year, we failed. Like, no, we got to learn. We actually need, not just in our own organizing spaces and organizations, but in this country, we need a much higher tolerance for failure because it's actually where we either get to learn things. Right? And it makes us less risk averse, which means we'll go and take more risks that actually allows us to win stuff.
What is the larger constellation of groups and coalitions you work with? What's the larger landscape?
Oh, yeah. No, we need an entire ecosystem. If we could just do it by ourselves, then it's not a big enough goal, right? So we get to work with some amazing partners. There's Unidos Minnesota, it's a fantastic and amazing organization that we're organizing Latinx folks across the state. Likewise, we also work with quite a few of the labor unions. Education Minnesota has been a deep co-conspirator with us and partner with us. There's like coalition spaces, but there's a bunch of alignment tables that have been particularly powerful. So there is one called We Make Minnesota, which is a space that is actually dedicated completely to revenue, which tends to be something that is an afterthought often in movements world and organizing. We're like going after the things that we want and we need and believe in, but have way less thought about how do we pay for it. There is Narrative Justice League, or NJL, is a group of organizers and communicators and policy folks who get to talk about narrative, but also co-conspire to like make Minnesota as progressive as possible, but do it in a way that is grounded in a real strategy. So we're in relationships with folks doing all types of really dynamic things and working together to get stuff done.
You had brought up the Minnesota Miracle, which got all this national press when Governor Tim Walz was picked as Kamala Harris's running mate.
Mm-hmm.
But this miracle, quote unquote, right, you point out that it didn't just suddenly appear.
No.
But this miracle preceded all that buzz about Walz. Can you tell us really simply what it was? When people say the Minnesota Miracle, what are they referring to?
Yeah.
And how exactly it happened?
So in Minnesota, because I think Minnesota, people who are not in Minnesota sometimes think that Minnesota is like this progressive bastion, and it is not at all. It is usually only a few thousand votes away from not being what we are. Folks should know that. So in 2010, we had a Democratic trifecta, just meaning that we had a Democratic governor, a Democratic House, and a Democratic Senate. They had won that for the first time in over a decade. And so there was, as you can imagine, up to that point, a backlog of things that people wanted. But the Democrats in that trifecta said, we are not going to overreach. We're going to moderate ourselves in order to keep our seats, theoretically. And in the very next election, they lost all their seats. So they did not deliver, right? And so we spent the next 10 years in Minnesota getting ready for the next trifecta. And what that looked like was we built a set of alignments. There's one called the Minnesota Values Project I'm very proud of, which is an inside-outside game group of legislators, legislative champions, but also organizations that are dedicated to power building. And we got in real relationship with each other, where we got to talk to real Minnesotans about the things that they wanted, the things they needed, what would actually benefit their families. Legislators built their agendas based on that. And then they got to business on putting the bills together, working with community, working with these organizations to actually make sure that these met the needs of Minnesotans. And then we, every single session, as I named, like what we did with paid family medical leave, we did that with hundreds of bills. And we got them what we called shovel ready. And so then when we got this quote unquote Minnesota Miracle in 2022, we then voted in another Democratic trifecta after 10 years of having divided government where nothing got done. And I could not overstate nothing got done in 10 years. We won this Democratic trifecta in 2022. And so in the legislative session in 2023, we were able to get so much done. For us organizationally, we got our entire agenda done. We had 30 policies. The entire agenda got done. So everything from 100% clean energy to universal school meals to remediating every single lead pipe in the state so that we'll never have a Flint, Michigan, to getting paid family medical leave, sick and save time, voting rights restoration, automatic voter registration. The list is very long. Childcare investment, $1 billion in housing. I mean, it is a very long list of amazing things that the state got done in 1 year. But it took us 10 years to build to it. And so that was an orientation of legislators who felt the hardship of what it means to lose your seat when you don't get anything done, to basically say, we are not going to fall into this status quo of like being afraid of overreach. We're going to actually deliver for what we've heard Minnesotans say time and time again they want. And that's what we were able to do.
I've read about the Minnesota Miracle, and just it all seems so basic and obvious. And this came up that there's a way people want to talk about these things as progressive policy, as opposed to the most basic
Common sense.
conditions
Yes.
for a living.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And it's a disservice because the reality is like it's just common sense, basic things that people should have, things that we deserve. I mean, I understand why people name them as progressive, but it's like, it is what people want, like full stop, even across partisanship. It's why we saw so many red states also pass ballot measures that are quote unquote progressive. They're just like basic things that people want and need, and they want to ensure that like their kids are okay for generations to come. They want to make sure that they are,
Right. Just, can I be okay right now, tomorrow, next month?
Yeah.
But there's been this backslide in people's living conditions, wages, quality of life that, of course, they're desperate for something very seemingly basic that turns out to be a fight politically.
Yes.
How do we reproduce this in other places? Is it possible in other places, given differences in demographics and conditions? Certainly, the South has a long tradition of organizing, but other parts of the country, not so much. So can we reproduce this?
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly believe that. I mean, it'll look a little different on different places for the reasons that you've named, but what is required is just a commitment to organize. And I will say, as someone who is both doing organizing work, is in an organizing ecosystem, it is easier said than done to do organizing because, frankly, we have for a long time, we've had a society, we've had a philanthropic infrastructure that actually decentralizes real organizing and instead incentivizes the shortcuts, the mobilization that has gotten people more and more to a place of like burnout and apathy. And so we really do need to, to do the long-term real work of organizing and like commit to it. I have been naming it in this metaphor that I find really helpful is like, we know that there was $15 billion with a B spent in this election cycle. And largely it went to ads and consulting firms that did not get funneled back into communities. We just burned it away, basically, right? And then there was a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of that was put into organizing, that built infrastructure, that has given organizations the ability to have their leaders ready for not just November 5th, but November 6th and January 21st. And the reality is that the more and more we continue to put into just like, TV and radio ads and media firms and not into like on the ground work, that is like playing the lotto. And when you put it into organizing, you're putting it into your 401k. You are putting in the investment that is going to actually build what you need for the long haul. It's going to have a real return on investment. I'm sorry to use just like, capitalistic terms, but like that is the clearest way that I look at it.
Totally. That is a great metaphor. I think there's sometimes a story with organizing campaigns that overcome big odds to win something powerful, like against a well-funded developer or a corrupt city council.
Yeah.
And people don't always know what's going on behind the scenes. I guess part of what I'm hearing is that what's really going on is this mobilization versus organizing.
We thought ourselves to a better place. Like, no, there is real work that happens. And so we should not be disillusioned, by what needs to happen. And again, because yes, I think it is this like notion of like the mobilization versus organizing, because when you're organizing, you're really enrolled in a real strategy. So how we got from A to B to C. But you also, because you're clear about power, you didn't think that it was, this like legislative champion did all these things for us. Like, yes, there are people who are elected and they do have good morals and good values, but they are also up against power. They're up against power who says, if you don't do what we want, we're not going to give you the money you need to get reelected. Like they're up against power of people who are yelling at them mad about whatever, but like they don't have the ability to actually move people to vote them in the next year. And then we get upset that like they were corrupted by dollars and blah, blah, blah. Like we didn't build enough power to actually flank them to do the stuff we needed. we have to take responsibility for that. We can't just be like, politics are gross and I don't want to get involved. Like, politics are going to run your life, whether you want them to or not. You should be in the game. Like, get in there, you know? None of this stuff just happens. Nobody is just like so like morally good that they shift the whole world without doing some work.
And as good a guy as Tim Walz is,
yeah,
he needed pressure.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And that's the thing is that's how it should be. Like, let's be for real. Like, we actually want people who are responsive to the people who live there in the place that they're governing. We don't just want somebody to come through and say, I'm going to do this, forget what everybody says. Like,
well, and I think it's occurring to me, a lot of people, I think, are looking for the perfect candidate who's progressive, hitting all the right things, and then we'll vote for them and then they'll take care of it. And we can just go back to day to day. Not to say, I mean, day to day is a slog for a lot of us, or it's hard, right? We're trying to go to work, make enough money to pay our rent. So there's not a lot of extra time. And so in a way, it's set up to want somebody to be the right candidate to then get into office and just do the right thing.
And I understand that to a degree. But the reality is like the things, you know, I'm sure me and you, Rachel, are aligned on probably most things. But there's probably going to be some differences that we have, right? And so your absolutely perfect candidate might be slightly different than my absolutely perfect candidate, which means in the rest of the millions of Americans, we are bound to not actually find a perfect candidate for all of us, you know? And so the reality is that we get to be at a place where we actually should start to belong to one another first. Like, the purpose of us building real relationships and community organizing is so that we create spaces of belonging for each other. There's no way we could have farm families and inner city Minneapolis folks and folks in the suburbs all co-conspiring together to build the state we need. We actually create a space of belonging first. Then we get to belief. We get to co-conspire, co-create, and create an analysis together that gets us to a belief that is aligned. And then we go out and get the elected officials that we need to fulfill the stuff we want. And they will never be perfect, but we together then get to be the ones to help to like flank that person to get what we need. And then to the point of like completely understanding, like we live in a society that's economically screwed over a lot of us. We have folks who have to work multiple jobs. Their life is already exhausting. And this idea of you want me to be politically involved and show up to all these pre-meetings and meetings and debriefs, and who got time for that? Understandable. But it's the point of building power is that the more people who are in, the capacity is spread around. You actually don't have to show up to all the things, but you're actually a real community where like, you know, that your neighbor is going to that one thing, you get to go to another, you get to show up together, you are actually involved and still a part of the political experiment together. So we'll keep moving along and we'll keep winning stuff, frankly.
You might be the perfect candidate, actually.
Oh, that is hilarious, Rachel.
Okay, what is your vision or hope for the future? And do you think we can actually organize a more unified, multiracial, working class electorate?
Yes. I mean, that is my hope for the future. It really is us having a truly committed and organized majoritarian group of folks who are creating this multiracial democracy and a caring economy where we all can thrive. And I believe it's possible wholeheartedly, because I get to see microcosms of it every day.
Thank you for your time. This has been such a joy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Rachel. This was great.
People have been asking, what's the way forward? Well, you heard it here, folks. Not only is there hope and a vision, but a victory that demonstrated what happens when working people get together to strategize and take action, where everyday people are engaging, collaborating with, and pushing politicians to make decisions in the best interest of the working class majority. The changing demographics of the electorate is something journalists, researchers, pundits, and politicos have been talking about for a long time. And now we've seen the effect in Technicolor. The mandate is clear. Working class voters want policies and politicians that deliver tangible improvement. So now what? We take what was shared in this show and apply it moving forward. Because as we learned, it's day to day, between election cycles, that we build and sustain a multiracial cross-class democracy. This is Shifting Terrain, and our last show of the season. Like you, we don't know what the future holds, but we'd like to keep the conversation going. Please be in touch with ideas for future episodes, collaboration, and thoughts about the show. You can contact us at our email address in the show notes. Shifting Terrain, like so many good things, was a team effort. I was lucky to work with some very smart, talented people, like the amazing Amanda Cowper, who executive produced with me, Rachel Rybacek. Production consulting and audio mixing by the incredible Karen Given. Music by Blue Dot Sessions. Thank you to our guest, JaNaé Bates, and a special thank you to eMedia. If you're inspired by the Minnesota Miracle, you too can organize with people. Find a local group or coalition, a working class politician that aligns with your values, and if you can't find it, start it. Or run for office. Let us know if you do. See you in the future.